So welcome and thank you to the Bots and AI team for giving me the opportunity to speak. So I started my consulting firm not long ago. It's been about a year. I was doing independent consulting and I found that there is a huge need for people to understand what conversational AI is. I know I started learning about it about 2-3 years ago when AI started to take hold in enterprise. I think a lot of you know chatbots have been around for a little bit, they were fun to play with, but a lot of them failed. So the reason why I'm up here is I love doing product development. I love understanding the human psychology of what problems do we want to solve for. So obviously this is a fintech event, so I'm going to give you a perspective from the financial side. I've done work in other industries as well, but from a financial perspective, the financial sector is one of the two top sectors. Retail's the other one that is very aggressively going after leveraging AI, machine learning, bots to figure out how they can monetize services, right? So the customer experience piece is important. And a lot of people think about B2C, business to consumer, largely. But I can tell you there's a lot of work going around in B2B, or business to enterprise. So there are, companies are looking inwards to have an outward impact on their clients. So I'm sure everybody, just looking at everybody's face, I think everybody has probably grown up with the web, with mobile, and been involved somehow or the other in application development, right? Either as a service or on-prem. How many of you had psychologists or philosophers involved in that process? In web and mobile? I know you. I know who that is. And he's not allowed to speak. So one of the major differences in this interface that we're talking about today, conversational AI, it is unprecedented in how it needs to be developed because for the first time in ever, technology is coming to us. We actually need to understand ourselves in order to produce this interface. Because mobile was swipe left, swipe right, close, right? We had to learn how to do all of those things. But guess what? Now the time is we got to understand ourselves to figure out how to help ourselves with this technology. It's quite an ironic but interesting challenge. So, bots are nothing but a new channel. So all the marketeers in the house, raise your hand. Where are my marketeers? There's nobody from marketing here? Oh, this is crazy. So what I've learned is bots are a new digital channel, right? And typically what people try to do, right, is authentic, I hate this word, authentically engage your audience, delight, right? Well, guess what? We're going to have to do it for ourselves. So alongside engagement, improving experience, personalization, lowering cost, right? Your CFOs are going to say, you want to do this project? How's it going to impact? How are you going to produce the revenue? How are you going to lower cost, right? And that is there. But my argument is if you do the first two, or the first three, the last two will take care of itself. Right? Because if customers want to do business with you or your employees want to stay on, it's if you take care of them, you will see the returns. Okay, circa 2016, right? How many of you interacted with bots on Facebook? Did you love them? All the hands went down. There's a reason for that. And there's no finger pointing or wrong or right way, right? When we began this journey together, all of us looking at this stuff, is to say, we're going to go design it like the best way we know, mobile and web. Right? And so off we go and we play with the tools. And by the way, these tools that a lot of great companies have created for us to go develop, the bar is very low now, right? Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Dialogflow, Core.ai, right? They're giving us all these platforms. Go build it yourself. That's great, except how do you think about how to create it? Should we go draw a happy path, which is what we typically do for web and mobile, and you say, oh, I know that the human is going to go down this path. And they don't. They go, can you answer my question? Where is my order? I don't know, sorry, I can't tell you, right? Or I'm going to hand you off to an agent. So that's been the learning curve. And so now we say, okay, we got to think about this in a little different way, right? Bots are a natural language interface. That's very critical to understand, right? Bots are not human. They will never be, hopefully, although you will read all sorts of press around it. But they can do interesting things, save us time, also do good, right? But they are different from mobile and web. So the expectations for us humans to use bots are very different than we do mobile and web. How many of you love Alexa? Does Alexa help do everything for you? Alexa can do simple things, but it's an expectation. How many Alexa devices have been shipped and growing at an alarming rate? Right? It's a huge number, right? So households are buying not just one, I think the number is like 2.5 devices between Google and Amazon or Alexa, because everybody in the house has a preference. I know I do, so my husband put an Alexa in our room, in the dining room. My son has the Google, so everywhere I go, she's just listening to me all the time, everywhere I go. So I'm like, this is a little crazy, but that's the way it is, right? This is what's different. This is why bots are not mobile apps, because mobile apps don't have all of these components, or rather they could, but from a natural language interface, this is extremely important. If you don't take care of sentiment analysis, right? How many of you have spoken to rude bots? Nice bots? Who knows Mitsuka? Has anybody heard of Mitsuka? So she's what? It's been what, 12, 16 years, something like that. That they've been. If you go mitsuka.com, go talk to the bot. You have a wonderful conversation. You think she's real, but they literally spent close to, I think, 16 years programming her to answer every single possible pattern that anybody can ask. It's remarkable, but it's not machine learning based, right? I think they've added it recently. So this is all the tech behind it. This is what excites me. This is why I got into this space, because I'm fascinated by human psychology. Us humans, we're all lovely people, sometimes not so lovely. All of us have a mix of IQ and EQ, is what I call it. So if you think about bots, you can maybe program it to be smart, to answer questions, because you're telling it if you do A and B, you reach C. But emotional intelligence is a different thing, right? You have to think about bots in a different way, because they're now going to take care of humans. Right. One of the things that I've been studying is sentiment analysis. So a lot of these bot platform developers are providing sentiment analysis. I think Stanford's got, one of the top sentiment analysis engines out there. But this will take some time for us to understand as we communicate with bots. Is it understanding our emotional state? There's a company called Affectiva. How many of you know Affectiva? Right, so they're doing a phenomenal job in integrating emotional intelligence into automobiles. How many of us want to get behind the wheel of an automobile and it tells us that you're falling asleep? I will actually admit, I fell asleep at the wheel many, many years ago, worked for 2 long hours and went to a party on the wrong day of the week. If the car could tell me you are falling asleep, drowsy, call somebody, whatever, would have been fantastic, right? Everybody's safe. I didn't kill anybody. My mother-in-law reminds me to this date, she was in the car. She hit her head, but she's fine. To me, building a bot's going to take a multidiscipline team. And I'm not just talking about the product manager and the lead technical person, the tester. We're talking about bringing in many more thought processes into this. So let me tell you a little story. If you go Google how AI was born in the 1950s, there were 9 disciplines that came together, each with their own definition of what AI should be. They included philosophers, psychologists, mathematicians, computer engineers, economists, right? Everybody came up with a definition. Now I fast forward to where we're at now, and we're entering into an era of trying to figure out what bots should do. Not many people are including those other disciplines, right? How should you be talking to a bot? How do you understand the psychology of a human being? So I actually mentor rising product and technology leaders, mostly women, who are asking, how do we get into this field? We're coming in from doing psychology degrees, right, or philosophy degrees. Everybody's going to have a space in this. You have to. Some people are very afraid, but I say if you would be afraid and close your eyes and think it's going to go away, it's not. So take a stand and put your perspective forward. So I say, okay, you got these 3, but you need more. And businesses better be thinking about it, because customers have choices on where they can go, right? Don't be afraid about this framework. So I do, like I said, I love product development. I think in frameworks, And I typically, when I'm talking to clients, I'm thinking, look, you got to start to think about it. You don't need to do everything up front. But right from understanding what conversational AI is, just simple terms, right? What is conversational AI? Everybody's got definitions. There is not a single dictionary yet that has all the definitions down. So when people say, well, what does this mean? You go, it depends. So, you know, we're still in that stage. It's emerging technology, right? Business use case. This is not a hammer looking for a nail, right? Not everything fits. You can't solve all the problems with AI and NLP. You have to have a conversation with the decision makers to say, okay, what are you trying to solve? Does it make sense to do it with a bot? Don't do it because you want your CEO on your quarterly earnings to say, we're doing something with AI and NLP. How many of you have that going on? I promise I won't tell your bosses. I see you, I see you. You have to be smart about it, right? To say that this makes sense. Sometimes it doesn't make sense. You still need a human in the customer service center where a client, very high net worth, calls in with a problem, right? You don't want them talking to a bot, right? So you want to be thinking about those things. Agile design, I'm sure the engineers in the room, developers in the room know this better than I do. The technical development piece. So I make it my business to learn who's coming out with the development platforms. And I have a fairly good idea, and they're always changing. So even what I say today, pretty much in like a week or two, they'll have new features out and they say, yeah, we got that, right? So everybody from, you know, the Amazons, the Googles, and Microsoft of the world to Core.ai, there's Fin.ai, if anybody's heard of them, they're actually financially focused on the Fintech side. Crowdsourced testing, this I found fascinating. So I've got a couple of partners that have analytics platforms where you can actually see transcripts of bot interactions between human and the bot. And it's fascinating. So people who are normally polite to you, there's one British lady, I will not name her. You know, British people are usually pretty polite, right? She found it liberating to berate the bot when she was talking to the bot. So interesting things happen. If you guys, there's Bot Analytics and Dashbot, they do a fantastic job with the analytics platforms. If you have a chance to try that out. Analytics, of course, you got to make sure this is a never-ending game, right? You can't just put your bot out there and forget about it because it has to constantly learn. And then technology training, and then managed services. You know, a product manager will have a job forever because the bot's got to continue learning. I tell people, think about a bot as a toddler. That's the stage of technology that we're at. It's not an adult. It used to be an infant when it was in the labs, but now it's a toddler and the toddlers run. We know how toddlers learn, right? You teach it, they'll make mistakes, but then they grow and they continue to learn. So expectation setting is important. I'm going to go through this faster. I'm going to do a time check. Am I good? Okay. Being very structured in your framework and discipline is going to be really important. You know, early days, you want to do skunk works. I think that's great. You know, you play around with it, say this is something that would take, because your users may not like what you put out first, but then you iterate, right? Defining the problem, segmenting the problem. Typically, most frameworks, most platforms have got, you know, an FAQ portion, and then an API portion where you can ask it questions for, say, a back-end application, right? And then, of course, you got to keep evaluating what you have. The planning part, yes. 1 minute. The planning part is where will the bot live? You got to make sure all your stakeholders are engaged. This is where a lot of psychological management comes in. The design piece, brief. Please do not write essays on, you know, when the bot's talking to you. I'm going to skip this and I'm going to go directly actually into a B2B use case, because a lot of people think that B2C is where, you know, most of the press is at. But B2B, if you start with your employees to give them productivity, to solve their problems, your customers will be naturally happy. That's one of the things that I've realized is that everybody wants to take care of their clients. That's where all the investments are going. A lot of the HR, IT, those are really simple use cases. But take a hard look at this into your own companies to say, how do I take care of my employees? Because they will take care of your clients in return.